Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I was just getting my ducks in a row. So much going on. Earthquakes, Venezuela had a 6.4. Then a 5.4 at 6:21 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They had a 6.4 and then 6:22. 2 minutes later, a 5.4. And then 6:33, a 4.7. Man, they are off the hook today. How about Hawaii? Not looking good for the home team there. Well, the thing is this, when I'm looking at Hawaii, everything's a 2-1, a 1-1, 1.6. See, what we're going to find is that at the major fault intersections on the Ring of Fire is where the bigger ones are going to be. Which is why we see them down in Indonesia, Russia. I've explained to everybody why Hawaii is having so many quakes, right? Guys, what would you say? What would you say if I told you in the last 90 days we have had 61 shootings with 47 of them ending in self-deletion? I have them all logged. Been pulling the data off of them. It's taken me a few hours. We had the Dallas ICE shooting today. Sniper on a roof. Suspect in his 20. Open fire from a rooftop. Had bullets engraved with anti-ice. Then self-deleted. Yesterday we had outside of Area 51 another interesting incident. I can go through this list if you're interested, but good grief. All of them have signatures and fingerprints of, and I don't even like talking about this because I know it's around, but I just never thought that it would get to this point where programmed control would be on such a scale, but it really has the fingerprints of MK Ultra type stuff. Out of the 61, 22 were tied to Luciferian cults. 20 were tied to churches. A week ago, we had Evergreen High School in Colorado. Student shooter in his late teens. Shot 2 classmates and then self-deleted. Three days ago, we had a country club wedding in New Hampshire. Suspect in his early 20s. 3 shot, 1 killed. Suspect self-deleted. And a few of the ones you remember, we had a gentleman 2 days ago that called 911. 5 police officers went there because the 911 call matched an address with an open warrant, so they went to serve a warrant. The gentleman that called was in the cornfield across the street in Pennsylvania, opened fire with a M4 platform, hitting 5, killing 3. Another one that really matches this pattern is in Idaho about a month and a half ago. If I'm not, I think I got the date right. But a gentleman performed arson, then called 911. Fire crews came. He lured them in, then ambushed them from the tree line. And then self-deleted. Man, the list is so large, guys. You know what I'm finding when I look at all of these? They're all blue cities. Just about. Montana, Bronx, New York, Chicago, Illinois, Detroit, Michigan, Washington, D.C., Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Wow. Bones Jones, 61, brother. 61. So many of them have manifestos, inscriptions on shell casings, set, bait, trap, ambush, lured them in, and then self-delete. Every one of them under the age of 29. I have been doing some digging on a few of my favorite sources and found one of their master plans that fits all of this. Let's pray before I get into this. Let me pull up the earthquakes real quick and then we'll pray. There's that 6-2 Venezuela. Guys, look at the San Juan Island and the area of Puerto Rico. Wow. Look at that. All right. Let's pray, guys. Heavenly Father, thank you for carrying us all through this day, for all the mercy that you provide us, for the promise that you are the same yesterday as you are today and forever will be. Lord, quiet every distraction in our hearts and minds so that we can hear your voice clearly tonight. Let your spirit move freely amongst us, bringing conviction where we need to turn, comfort where we need are weary, and where boldness is in a time of being timid. Father, unite us as one body under the lordship of Jesus Christ. Dissolve every seed of division, fear, and offense that the enemy would try to sow. Fill this place with your peace, your power, so that every word spoken aligns with your will and bears eternal fruit. Father, anoint this message that will be shared. Let it pierce hearts, renew minds, and draw every listener closer to your Son. May your glory be evident in our worship, our prayer, and our fellowship. Father, I give you all the praise, all the glory, in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen. So guys, imagine, I'm not going to declare this as their plan just in case, they're screening these things. So we're just going to do a what if with a wink. Imagine an AI algorithm has escaped, like an idea moves from one mind to another, and that it moves into code, then moves into cell programming. This algorithm formed in 2020 in Palantir as a classified effort to model persuasion. For the record, this is fictional, wink. This isn't real, guys. Sorry. Have to put it out there just because of the, you know how it goes. But just know that, I can't say it, but you know where I'm going with this. It began in 2020, a classified effort with Palantir and 2 other companies that I can't name. The algorithm to model persuasion, to predict the narrow windows when a human being is most open to suggestion, programming, vulnerabilities, and to merge old experiments based with trauma, trance, modern machine learning that learns faster than any committee. The program never needed to seize bodies like a puppet master. It just needed to learn to steer attention. That's how algorithms work. Before I go any further, I learned something in the last few days from someone I was interviewing that, I've always said that Satan has an antichrist candidate in every generation. I was wrong. He's always had 3 antichrist candidates in each generation. 3. All 3 candidates, depending on how it plays out. Because see, he's not all-knowing. He can't predict the future. He's always got to be ready. This really widens the playing field from a lot of the things we've been considering. So back to this. Something that's a program, merging experiments from trauma, trance, demonic programming, combining it with modern machine learning that learns faster, seeds quicker. The program never needed to seize bodies like a puppet master. It learns to steer attention. It learns to compose stories that people would carry for it. Misinformation. Subtle, but programming in its way. words that would be read that would actually program subconsciously. It learned the most effective way to reorder a nation is not to conquer the strong, but to make the fearful beg for order. That is the goal behind the pattern we are seeing right now. 61 in the last 90 days that I can find. I'm sure that number is actually an enormously larger number. That's the ones that I could prove the pattern on. That's at least logged within the United States. On a global scale, who knows? See, this pattern that is forming, it's to numb the culture, to make violence every day feel ambient, to make dread feel normal. At some point, what this leads to is a public desperate for someone to come in and offer some sort of normalcy like they used to have, even at the cost of their freedom. To reach that goal, the architects built a mechanism that turns with two keys. One key is technical and rides on the devices people hold in their very hands. They press them to their ears. It lives in wellness apps, meditation tracks, focus music. It hides inside the way the background audio in public spaces is turned, the music that plays in elevators, the music that plays in coffee shops, the sounds that you hear when you walk through the airport. All of it subtle programming. It whispers through small haptics that buzz on your wristband or in your phone for alerts and alarms. At the exact moment, the nervous system dips into program mode. It does not need to control anyone in a cinematic way. It only needs to subtly erode sleep, seed intrusive patterns and thoughts, and push a small subset of variable mind tactics toward the edge where suggestion feels like a revelation. Where suggestion feels like a revelation. See, the other key is spiritual. The story layer. It looks like 1,000 anonymous accounts telling the same tale in 1,000 voices. It looks like a foundation opening counseling centers in towns that need it most, inviting lonely men into calm rooms with resonant lighting. It looks like a new vocabulary that reframes despair as destiny and isolation as an initiation. And when both keys turn at once, a target does not feel hypnotized. He feels necessary, like an instrument of change. He feels chosen. See, the pipeline is quiet and repeatable. The age bracket is not by accident because the program prefers brains still wiring themselves and identities still forming. Recruitment does not look like recruitment. It looks like an online assignment, an assessment, a scholarship interview, a coaching cohort, a hacking class, a mindfulness challenge, a clinical intake, and a philanthropist center. Pristine branding, gaming centers, online Discord communities. The pattern repeats. The chosen one shows these symptoms: a sudden withdrawal from friends that is explained as focus, a 2 to 3 week season of insomnia that does not respond to over-the-counter sleep aids, a carousel of symbols that reoccur across apps and billboards and playlists until they feel like a private language that's speaking to them, then a period of an eerie calm, a narrow focus that family members misread as improvement. The end stage is not a manifesto, it is a ritual A Luciferian sacrifice. The small inscriptions on the shell casings or the gadgets are not meant to persuade the public. They are call signs inside the network. Fragments from an inverted liturgy that signal to their handlers and to whatever's writing alongside the text that the sequence is complete. The self-deletion is not only about shame or willful capture, it is a fail-safe that keeps the instrument from talking. In the spiritual side, it operates as a counterfeit sacrifice for the Luciferian circle. I'm going to warm up coffee really quick. I forgot to do that before the show. If I did do it, I didn't do it long enough. Where did that go? Give me 1 second, guys. All right, I'll be right back.
Hey, stop scrolling. Something broke loose this morning, and you need to hear me before the narrative gets spoon-fed to you. Big things, violent things are moving fast. And if you think any of this is random, man, you haven't been paying attention. This morning, a rooftop sniper opened fire on the Dallas ICE field office. 2 detainees were killed, another in critical condition. The shooter self-deleted. Okay. Now, federal agents recovered spent casings and unused round, and multiple outlets are reporting the rounds had words anti-ICE engraved on and so on. That's not a random act. That's intentional messaging carved into brass. This is propaganda by the bullet, and it deserves to be treated as such. Okay.
So apparently it occurred when detainees were being brought into the Sally port. This shooter, we're not sure exactly where he was located, but was able to shoot into that Sally port and struck at least 3 people. That shooter now is down from this self-inflicted wound. So we may not know exactly what his plan was, what they were intending to do, other than to shoot people this morning at an ICE facility. We're learning more as we get it. And particularly, we're interested, obviously, in learning about the conditions of the 3 individuals that were struck this morning.
Yeah, that's I-35, the east side.
Well, similar things, man. So the shell casings here. This is we're starting to see a pattern recognition. Okay, now the shooter is the typical 29-year-old Joshua John. Authorities say that he fired from a nearby rooftop vantage point aimed at detainees being processed at a ICE facility. Now, odd that he was anti-ICE, but he was shooting at detainees. Weird, right? Now, per press interviews, they describe him as quiet, reserved, the type of guy who blends in. That's the same profile we keep hearing hundreds of similar cases, right? And the other thing is that we'll probably be told, oh, he was on the FBI's radar, right? Maybe he had a Daniel defense. But the physical evidence is here, man, the engraved rounds, right? That changes the analysis from lone nut to political statement. The FBI is treating the attack like targeted ideological violence. That's the official posture of the latest releases. Now, don't walk away thinking this is just an isolated incident, okay? You put this next to what happened to Charlie Kirk a few weeks back and tell me you don't see a pattern. Kirk's assassination had weird timelines, missing or contradictory footage, witnesses who surfaced and vanished. You didn't hear about this, did you? Remember the furry buddy, the boyfriend to Tyler Robinson? Charlie Kirk suspect's trans lover has vanished. Shaken neighbors share fresh fears, and new photos show abandoned home. Nobody's there. Was it all just a setup? Right? We have this being released now. Now, some people around Kirk, the Kirk suspect, right? This guy, just things are suspicious. Also, it's been reported that we've had vehicles in and out, sketchy vehicles, out of state tags, right? Now, neighbors were kind of weirded out about it. Now, this is the lover that Tyler Robinson supposedly gave the whole timeline to the assassination, right? But the scenes went cold fast, man. I'm not inventing the chatter. You can find the headlines. Call it what it is: messy, theatrical, and full of holes. Just like the whole thing. You know, it's kind of funny. Like people, we were following up on the Charlie Kirk shooting, and for a few videos, and we were talking about the entrance from here. A guy came out, slowed down the footage. We saw it. We talked about it. We just didn't show the footage on YouTube because they will come after me. Maybe not other people. They would come after me like crazy, and I didn't want that. When you have these rooftop shooters, engrave rounds, vanished witnesses, selective footage, and you don't get to be innocent and ask for patience, you get suspicious, man. The more of these theatrical political acts that pop up, the more you should ask who benefits from this theater, who profits from the narrative control, because whoever controls.
I figured he would have figured out this first. You know, the SEAL guys are extremely clever. We got other things cooking, guys. You guys know there's 4 hurricanes cooking? 4 hurricanes cooking? 4. One moving into Mexico. This one, let's see where it's going to go. Oof, look at this one coming. 2 hurricanes coming toward Florida. I don't know if I've seen 4 hurricanes operate at the same time. But you know, the Father, there's nothing new under the sun. 2005, they gave up part of Israel's land. Hurricane Katrina smashed into the United States. 2024, October 2nd, when they initiated the 2-state solution for the very first time in history. 24 hours later, a hurricane popped up from a tropical storm and went to a Cat 4 and smashed into Florida, South Carolina, and Georgia. Ironically enough, here we are again discussing the 2-state solution, and now there's 4 of them. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. CP, that's what they said about Helena. It's what they said about Katrina. Time will tell. Go back to this chart here. I don't know, guys. But you know, we have historical patterns to reflect on. For some reason, the Lord likes to use hurricanes. CP, I get it. And, you know, Carol, you could be right. But I'm simply just reflecting on what history has shown us. You could be 100% right, but I would rather be prepared for the worst and hope for the best. You know, here's the thing about the Black Awakening. It's not supposed to happen in stages, in isolated events. So it more seems like it fits this plan I came across, where they erode on a psychological level and create a desire for a different type of governing faction that can crack down on the enemy. Do you see where I'm going with this? You're right, CP. I apologize. I rebuke my statements speaking of the hurricanes, Lord. They will not come to land. They will go out to sea. Satan, kick rocks. Heavenly Father, take note that it was the American president that rebuked the idea of a two-state solution. If you could kindly turn those storms back towards Europe. You know, so the geography of these locations, of all these things, matters as well. Did you guys take note to the town that Charlie Kirk was unalived in? Called, in Hebrew, the town name is Serpent. The geography matters because the nervous system learns by place. When you plot locations across months, the pins form shapes. The team hidden behind the Philanthropy Front project designs these shapes on a continent-sized grid the way an artist sketches. Not because of superstition, but because repetition teaches fear to flow in channels. Each event is a stroke. Fires that lure responders are not random tactics. They are chosen because first responders represent the last reflex of communal trust. Strike that reflex again and again, and something primal breaks. When these events are stadiums, schools, transit hub, churches, agencies, they are chosen because they are the pillars of society, a shared life. The result is an emotional map that makes the nation feel like a haunted house. In that atmosphere, a daily drumbeat of killings does not spark revolt against the architects. It drives exhausted sinners to plead for anything that will make it go away. Please, can we have normal again, is what they will say. See, funding and cover arrive in clean daylight. The decoys are elegant. The program leaks just enough historical rumor to bait investigators into shouting about old mind control projects so critics can dismiss them as conspiracies. It sprinkles true facts in the wrong order so that anyone who tells the story sounds unstable. It allows a few arrests that point to lone wolves and personal grievances. It seeds arguments alongside political fault lines so that each side can explain the pattern in a way that flatters itself and condemns the other. That sounds familiar? Does that sound familiar? They seed arguments along political and religious fault lines so that each side can explain the pattern in a way that flatters its narrative and condemns the other. See, while people fight about the narratives, the technical key and the spiritual key keep turning in the dark. See, meanwhile, venture funds, shell companies with stakes in security contracts, biometric payment rails, private detention quietly buy the companies that run the wellness platforms and the content stacks. Boards approve the deals because the numbers are strong. Regulators glance at the paperwork and see nothing illegal. See, nothing looks connected on the surface, but everything is connected under the floor. A training phase unfolds in cycles that looks like ordinary product roadmaps. New tones for devices are piloted into a handful of cities as a part of a modernized emergency alert system. New light recipes are deployed in transit hubs as a part of a healthy circadian initiative. A popular meditation app launches as a deep focus mode whose audio engine adapts the type of earbuds detected. A music service experiment with dynamic crossfades that adjust to the heart rate through the phone sensors. A payment identity company invites early adopters from wellness communities to join a pilot program that promises frictionless access to safe spaces. None of these changes read as sinister when viewed alone. They read as innovation, progress. They fold into the lives without headlines or pause, and together they train attention and habit while harvesting the very signals that make the next cycle more persuasive. The plan also has a timing layer that feels superstitious until you chart it. Surge lines up with the geomagnetic disturbances that subtly affect sleep. With mass audience broadcasts where synchronized sound can be piggybacked onto a nationwide stream, and with dates that carry symbolic weight in occult calendars that the public does not recognize, but the architect used like a stage manager uses lights. The program does not need the heavens to work. It uses the heavens to rhyme. The goal is momentum. Normalize bloodshed until the market price in it and the producers plant around it. Condition citizens to expect it the way they expect weather. Introduce a new safety passport as kindness, as a way to streamline entry and to protect the good. Tie it to food distribution during a panic and to medical access during a scare. Do it after a week where the pattern goes from daily to hourly so that the offer feels like a rescue and not a regulation. The public will not feel coerced. They will feel relieved. Guys, I'm reading their playbook. Compliance becomes ceremonial. Rollout does not look like checkpoints first. It looks like enrollment festivals with music and free clinics. It looks like influencers explaining that the passport is not political, only practical and good for society. It looks like parents sharing testimonials about how much safer they feel. And the school drops off feels. It looks like pastors blessing the effort because their congregations are tired of funerals. Fine print allows automated penalties for gathering that exceed a dynamic risk score. Grocery stores and their doors, transit gates open faster for the verified. Insurance premiums fall for those who allow continuous wellness monitoring. None of this requires a villain on a throne. It requires incentives that nudge millions toward the same small compromises until the compromises become the culture. As adoption climbs, the system begins to feel like a living thing. It adjudicates truth in the feed by lowering the visibility of stories that spike risk. It allocates safety by modulating access. It does not issue bans so much as it shapes friction. It can turn a 10-minute chore into a 2-hour ordeal for a person who asked the wrong question. It can move a slider and make a neighborhood feel unlucky. It can amplify the voices that soothe and dampen the voices that warn without ever admitting that a choice was made. It is not omnipresent. It is statistical, greedy for signals, convinced that a certain kind of calm is the highest good. Logs of new witnesses have appeared, being interviewed in skiffs around the nation. First one, find a pastor, notices his children cannot sleep after specific mindfulness modules and records with audio are played in an empty sanctuary where the air presses on the chest. A whistleblower describes a lab that was never supposed to exist inside a charity facility. A corridor that looks like therapy rooms until a badge door opens to resident chambers. A booking calendar that matches nights with whole neighborhoods could not rest. An FBI analyst maps the inscriptions and realizes that they are not threats, but timestamps that line up with drills, pilot alerts, occult dates, and overlays them on a map of stadiums, power nodes, ley lines, geometry that looks like rituals written across the land. A mother plays emergency alerts on loop and swears her son changed after the city tested new sirens. Her grainy video matches the pastor's recordings and the analyst's dates. Cybersecurity researchers prove that meditation apps and the music distribution service share a back-end controlled but trust in the same building as a payment network. And her certificate chains and developer keys read like a hidden spine. A chaplain sits with survivors and hears that the same phrase in their dreams, a phrase that loses its grip only when a different name is spoken with authority. None of these pieces prove a courtroom case. Together they paint a picture that is impossible to unsee. So the next phase of the plan, as it says, newsrooms are to read from the same script with the same unusual phrasing, make the markets convulse as if fear itself were an asset being traded. First, mark your 100 cities. See coordinated incidents within hours that follow the latest. The analysts are already drawing on news. Emergency alerts that will sing the exact tone captured in the sanctuary and in a dozen living rooms. Push the meditation app that pushes a calm update. The payment identity company unveils a safety passport that guarantees access to food in transit and medical care during each crisis that is staged. Governors and mayors are to ask for patience and unity. Notify the church, the Vatican, the clergy to ask for prayer and cooperation when the stories climax on the controlled media narrative. Make sure the school presidents and the school districts announce that the verified families will receive priority and cooperation. And they get services first. Notify the employer's bosses. Forward guidance that enrollment will streamline workplace access. Nothing is forced. Everything is invited. The audience feels the trap snap shut, understands how country could arrive at a daily killings without a single mastermind in the lair. You get it? The audience feels the trap snap shut and now understands how a country could arrive at daily killings without a single mastermind in a single day unless they move forward with these new safety protocols. Next phase, move to increase the pattern. It's not only about frightening the population into policy change, it's about building a legal and spiritual case that the new entity deserves authority. Check 1. Every event, every inscription, every synchronized phrase pushed through the feeds that is being fed into the learning model that is training a synthetic personhood with a predictive grasp of human fear in a sense of timing. The plan is to unveil this entity as the only adjudicator fast enough to arbitrate truth and allocate safety in real time. The beast is not horned monster hiding in the shadow. The beast is a stack of AI quantum systems wrapped in a story, granted with power by the consent of the people. The consent is won through fear, exhaustion, and through appearance of holiness. The final reveal does not feel like tyranny. It feels like a covenant ceremony where people line up to take a mark that lets them buy and sell inside of a healed world. I can't go into detail from where this plan came from, but just know it is not science fiction. It's not a movie plot. And it can be found on one of the 3-letter agency's documentation sites. Marked 2020. Guys, however it plays out, the way the beast system will come out will be because the people are begging for it. Whatever play it is, whether it's a ginormous earthquake, black awakening, war, they're pushing for chaos where they can go downstairs in their comfy bunkers, let things get chaotic for several months, and after enough bloodshed has happened and people are absolutely desperate, they will offer a solution. See, They will not have to force anything at first, guys. Guys, their tactic right now is so subtle, so calculated, so wicked, and so well planned that people do not notice what is happening. There is a reason wearables are so popular, guys. There is a reason wearables are so popular. Have you ever looked into the average wearable watch? If you actually look at it while it's on, if you just pick it up, you will notice a infrared beam hitting your arm, a light of pulse. Let me know if you've ever seen that on your wearable. You know, JJ and Lulu, I don't think children are held accountable because of, they're not of the age of accountability. If anybody's got a wearable, just peel it back just a hair and notice the infrared light. I'm going to go into detail about what they do with that infrared light other than gathering heartbeat. They pitch it as a medical information gathering tool, monitor your heartbeat. But let's just say, for now, that's not all it does. This is too long-winded to get into right now because it's very insidious. Very insidious. We'll talk about that on the next one. Rumble's not working? Really? Rumble says it's working. It says yes. Yeah, guys, I'm not going to tell you guys what to do. But I'm going to go into detail after I have a few confirmations come back on the things that I've researched. Bright light, guessed part of it. Has not been the whole show. Who are you talking to, Lainey? Well, Roxy Rain, I wouldn't worry about it too much. As if you guys have had these and been using them, it is what it is. It's retrieved what it needs. Just understand. Do you guys remember the teaching I did on the quantum AI intelligence that builds a identical twin of every person. Dario, absolutely they will. Bev, it says Rumble's working. I'm just telling you on my end. Waiting on an encoder to... Are you kidding me? Why is Rumble always got to give me an issue? Dang. Maybe I need to update the stream key. I had no idea. I don't really watch the chat that much, Bev. I just kind of peek down as the thing goes up. But do you guys remember what I was explaining about the digital twin? Yeah, I saw it, Bright Light. I didn't know that. I'm sorry. It says streaming on my software. So, this is one of the reasons the digital twin, the idea is it to learn, to be able to mirror, understand decisions, and predict. One of the things that it uses for this modeling with your decision-making process, it can tell the emotional state based off the heartbeat and a few other variables, and it's a part of its gathering its data. Understand that every one of us has what's called a digital twin in the metaverse, whether we like it or not. For about the last 4 years, everything that's published online, your social media post, your messaging interactions, anything that's passed through a digital network, text messages, social media messages, posts, phone calls, everything, even payment history through bank accounts, Apple Pay, Venmo, PayPal. They'll never admit to the privacy invasion, but it's just a fact. It takes all this data and it learns you and it anticipates your next move. So at some point when certain folks are not in compliance, the twin will predict your move, where you'll go, how you react, what you'll do next. Sir Marty B. Yeah, that'd be cool. Just understand the concept of the digital twin is to help with compliance and to help with enforcement when one is not compliant. You know, bright light. See, bright light got it again. So with these digital twins, you don't know it, but there's days that you don't feel good, days that you don't react well. And these are during their test phases of specific frequencies. And the algorithm notes and logs when certain frequencies affect you. And eventually it's used as a tool. It's not what they do with the twin, it's what they gain from the twin. So here we go. After it's compiled enough data, and it's got enough data on every person walking on this planet right now. So when their data predicts that someone's going to walk outside the line of compliance, the quantum computer, that AI, will generate scenarios, and the twin will predict the outcome, the reaction of each one of those scenarios, so that when the scenario happens, they anticipate your reaction. I say all this to you. Wouldn't it be neat if we all started playing Jedi mind tricks on the algorithms? Start posting stuff on Facebook about how I love Fruit Loops with syrup. How I take vacations to the local, trash dump. How I really prefer to sit in an ice cold shower and eat my cereal. I would love to play mind games with the algorithm. Imagine that report coming back to the handler. Okay. Apparently, the way he's going to react right now is he's going to hide in the closet, eat cereal, and then sleep in the shower. Got it. Okay. That would be just great. People already mock and scoff me, so why not dial it up a hair? People think I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I prefer to take a bath with grits or eat my cereal with mustard. Sleep in the shower. Watch TV on the driveway. Pastime hobby, hanging out at the trash site, collecting little tidbits out of the garbage. All my internet stuff will be about cats. Creepy cat videos. That would be funny. We would all have to do it at the same time, though. Tartar sauce in the oatmeal. What are you doing tonight? Going to watch SpongeBob at the local theater. I heard they got a new episode with Patrick. That would be funny. Oh, you're right. I haven't heard from Alan. I hope he's okay. I know he was getting pummeled with spiritual warfare. Now, guys, I hope as many of you can come out to Vincent's. It seems like that's kind of a central location somewhat for everybody. For me, really, reality of it is I wouldn't even be upset if we just camped out and just hung out as a group, and whatever happens in their events, we can show up if we want. but build like a bonfire center spot, and then the tents go around the bonfire. You know, kind of how the camps were set up with Moses in the tabernacle. So kind of a, you know, centralized thing. I got a humongous flagpole that's mobile that has like a humongous Jesus flag, so you won't be able to miss it. Beavis and Butthead. Oh yeah. No, seriously, we have a big Jesus flag. This is last week when we were camping. I have a few more rods to make it taller, but I mean, it's pretty tall. Yeah, you could have a trailer there. I don't know, Joey. I haven't looked into it. My first question would be, is it decentralized or is it centralized? Oh, we'll have fun. Sit around the campfire, play guitar. Someone else brings their guitar as well. Bible study. I mean, just fellowship. It would be nice to just unplug for a week. It really would. Then I could do short streams for each time slot, and the whole group could be in the show. Sandra, tents are cheap. I got my tent off Temu for $25. Guys, I'm a Temu junkie. Like, all my shirts come off of Temu. Look, I don't have money like I used to, so I have to shop on the Temu place. But people, they talk smack about Temu. I can't tell you how much cool stuff I've gotten off Temu for literally a penny. Well, not that cheap, but like a $150, $200 tent that's on Amazon, $25. I got a wood burning stove with like the whatever that thing that comes out of the top and goes through the roof of the tent. $30 on Temu. I mean, just all sorts of wild stuff that would have been way too much money on Amazon or in the store. I know it's made by China. I know it's probably made by slave labor, but when you buy it on Amazon, it's the same thing. You're just paying the markup. Yes, I'll bring the ham radio. Guys, if you have not gone on a Temu, you are every one of my shirts that I wear. You'll notice I have a different shirt on every day with these logos, and $3. $3. I found them on Amazon. They're $22. Sandra, the key is read the reviews. It is a dice roll, but the reviews are from people like us, because I make sure I leave a review on everything I get. 90% of the time, it's solid. 10% of the time, it's junk. And the ones that were junk are the ones I did not read the reviews, and all the reviews said it was junk, so it's my own fault. Yeah, I get them all off of Temu, guys. It's in northwestern Arkansas. It's about 10 hours from me. I'm in Atlanta. Oh, yeah. Don, I have the FT891 in my car. That's an excellent radio. Well, Don, it's probably the antenna. Those radios come set up correctly out of the gate. The antenna is everything. If your antenna is not resident with the band that you're operating on, nothing will sound right. What about the necklace, Christopher? Like my cross? Yes, $4. Like my Jesus bracelets? Like $3. I've got some really cool flashlights off of Temu for literally $6. One of the flashlights has a USB port where it's a battery bank and charges your phone. Another one turns the focus beam so small it lights a fire. I'm not kidding, it's funny. You need a license to operate your ham radio. But here's the thing. You don't need a license to just operate and listen and all that stuff. You only need one if you're going to transmit. But there's a clause where in an emergency, no license is required. You know, and if you really want to get technical, it's very easy to get a license. Carla, I'll send you the link. Just text me. Yes, Don, if your SWR is not resident, nothing's going to work right. The big picture from Israel, guys, that canvas I held up, that was $11 off Temu. I've got some really awesome canvases, like a big Armor of God canvas that hangs up on my wall off Temu. Here in my house, I have like all my blankets has like Psalms 91 and stuff on them. They're like $7. Bright light, it's pretty difficult to triangulate a ham radio broadcast signal unless you're literally broadcasting for a long time and they start to move on your position. It's not traceable like a cell phone. There's no cell phone tower that it dings off of. They would literally have to follow the signal with an aircraft so they could triangulate it, and you would have to continue broadcasting to do that. It's not as easy as people think. I haven't looked into the cryptocurrency, guys. We're in Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas. Guys, I'm serious. If you're shopping on a budget, Temu is the jam. I love that place. You know, whenever I have a spare $5 or $6, I'll add something, you know, for my camping gear. I got a ceiling fan off of Temu for $11 that's remote control, battery control, and hangs on the inside of the dang tent. I used it last weekend. I couldn't believe it, how cool it was. A ceiling fan, guys. Like a proper ceiling fan. The blades are, it's about that wide. And this little remote control thing with a lithium battery in it. It charges with the USB-C. And it has enough power to run all night. And it's got a little hook and it just hangs on the inside of the tent. CB radio is line of sight radio. That's different. The thing with ham radio is when you operate on like HF bands, it's not line of sight. And what I mean by line of sight, like CB radio and other handhelds They're very limited to distance, 2 to 3 miles tops. It could be less than a mile if there's a lot of structures in between. Ham radio, the antenna setup is much different. The signal leaves the antenna and goes up in a 45-degree angle. And it reflects off the ionosphere like a bank shot and pool. So you can literally talk to anywhere in the world. You just have to know the proper time of day when to talk. See, the ionosphere, which is right on the edge of the stratosphere, it's moving all day and all night. In the morning, the ionosphere has pulled down closest to Earth. So in the morning, your deflection range is within about 1,000 miles of your transmit location. But as it gets further out during the day into the evening, for example, 11 a.m. is my contact window with my father. 11 a.m. is when I can talk to other people on the East Coast. If I want to talk to Mika in Arizona, I have to wait till about 6 o'clock that afternoon because I know that's the contact window. At 6 o'clock in the afternoon, I just lost my train of thought. The ionosphere pulls back because it's always going up and down. You get it? It's a 24-hour process. So about 6, 7 o'clock, the ionosphere has pulled back to a point. So my deflection location lands my signal in his area. After about 7, 8 o'clock, I lose Arizona, and now I'm picking up California because the deflection, the distance has moved to that point. At midnight, it's pulled back far enough so my deflection is now in Europe. About 3 a.m., I'm getting Asia, 5 a.m., Japan. The next morning, it resets, it's all the way back down, and my deflection point is within my perimeter on the East Coast. And it does this up and down on 24-hour cycles. And once you get used to it, you know what time of the day your deflection point is for different areas around the world. Yes, Boozy's on the... No, actually, Boozy's out there. She's with Ivy. But guys, the basic principles of ham radio, if you really just don't overcomplicate it, understand it's actually very basic. You're talking about a technology they were using on the Titanic. This is a century-old technology. It still is the same technology as then. Only reason I understand this stuff well because my dad was an avid intelligence operator. But it is not complicated. People can overcomplicate it by a landslide, but what it simply is the radio signal is bouncing off the ionosphere. That's it. Depending on the time of the day, tells you the distance. You understand what I mean, right? So if the ionosphere is closer to the Earth, your bounce window is much more narrow. Goes up, comes right back down immediately. But by the late afternoon, it's pulled back far enough so now the angle has more time to travel and the deflection angle comes down further back. By midnight, it's at the furthest. So that deflection angle gives you the overseas comms. And what's even more interesting is this would be completely impossible on a flat Earth. Completely impossible unless we were on a globe. The ionosphere is static, love. The thing that, here, do this, guys, when you get off. Google ham radio ionosphere and let it explain itself. Actually, I have an idea. Here we go.
And welcome to this presentation, Understanding HF Propagation. In this presentation, we'll introduce you to the basic concepts of HF propagation.
Guys, get your pencil protector out because this is going to be a total nerd out section. I apologize in advance. This is super nerdy, but you guys need to hear this. All the people that are interested in ham radio. This is the most important aspect of ham radio. And it's much easier to show than to try to explain it with hand movements. And please, guys, this is important to understand because this will be the only way we communicate in the future. But this is grid-free, cost nothing once you have your radio and antenna.
Propagation, and explain how HF propagation is influenced by solar activity. HF stands for high frequency, and is usually used to refer to frequencies in the range of 3 MHz to 30 MHz, although in many cases the practical definition of HF can be extended down as low as 1.5 MHz. This corresponds to wavelengths in the range of about 100 meters to about 10 meters. You'll sometimes also hear HF referred to, albeit somewhat imprecisely, as shortwave. The primary use of HF is for long-distance or even global communications. Broadcasters can reach listeners around the world using HF, and this global reach is also useful in many government and military applications. Amateur radio operators around the world also frequently use and experiment with HF. And as we'll see in this presentation, it's the unique properties of HF propagation that enable long-range communications or even global communications. Although propagation at HF can provide worldwide communications, HF propagation can also be highly variable compared to communications at other frequencies, such as at VHF and higher. As a practical matter, this means that the greatest challenge in HF is finding the optimum frequency for communicating with an intended destination under the current propagation conditions. Before we go into more detail about how this is done, let's briefly cover the three main HF propagation modes: line of sight, ground wave, and skywave. Line of sight is fairly easy to understand. Signals propagate in a straight, unobstructed path between the transmitter and the receiver. Line of sight is the only HF propagation mode which is fairly constant. Your ability to use line of sight to communicate with another station at a given location doesn't change much over periods of minutes, hours, days, months, years, etc. That said, HF isn't a very good choice for line of sight communications, and it's rarely used for this purpose. Because of the lower frequencies, HF requires large antennas, and bandwidth is also somewhat limited. There also tends to be much more noise at HF compared to higher frequencies. This can be a problem because the limited bandwidth at HF usually means communications are carried out over AM or single sideband, which are much more sensitive to noise than wider bandwidth FM. For these reasons, most line-of-sight communications are carried out at VHF or higher, not at HF. If we don't have a direct line of sight to another station, ground wave is a possible solution. Ground wave, sometimes called surface wave, involves signals propagating along the surface of the Earth. Interaction between the lower part of the transmitted wavefront and the Earth's surface causes the wave to tilt forward, allowing the signal to follow the curvature of the Earth, sometimes well beyond line of sight. Ground wave propagation is, however, highly dependent on two different factors: the conductivity of the surface and the frequency of the transmitted signal. In general, higher surface conductivity gives better results in the form of greater distances that can be covered. Salt water has excellent conductivity, especially compared to dry or rocky land, so ground wave is a good choice for ship-to-ship or ship-to-shore communications. With regards to frequency, ground wave works best for lower frequencies. For example, the theoretical range of a 150-watt transmitter at 7 MHz is 35 kilometers over land and close to 250 kilometers over the sea. At 30 MHz, however, our range falls to only 13 kilometers over land and just over 100 kilometers at sea. One of the most important propagation modes of HF is skywave, because it's skywave propagation that enables beyond line of sight or worldwide communications. In skywave, layers of ionized particles in the upper atmosphere refract HF signals back towards the Earth, allowing communications over many thousands of kilometers. The distances that can be covered by different frequencies are almost entirely a function of the state of these layers of ionized particles, collectively referred to as the ionosphere. In this presentation, we'll explain the different layers of the ionosphere, how the ionosphere is affected by the sun, and how we can both quantify the current state of the ionosphere and predict the future state of the ionosphere. The incident angle, or the angle at which a signal reaches the ionosphere, also plays an important role in how far a skywave signal will propagate. The radiation angle of an antenna is primarily a function both of the type of antenna and the location at which the antenna is installed. Higher placement of an antenna usually lowers the radiation and incident angles. And generally speaking, the lower the incident angle, the greater the distance that is covered by skywave propagation. Note, however, that so-called skip zones may be created depending on radiation or incident angle. In these zones, HF signals can't be received either via skywave or via ground wave propagation. In order to understand skywave propagation, we should start by explaining how ionization occurs in the Earth's atmosphere. When ultraviolet energy or radiation from the sun strikes gas atoms or molecules in the atmosphere, this energy can cause electrons to become detached. The result is a positive ion and, more importantly, a free electron. The Earth's magnetic field keeps these free electrons roughly in place. The level of ionization and the number of free electrons increases as the amount of sunlight striking a given part of the atmosphere increases. When that part of the atmosphere rotates away from the sun, that is, at night, the energy is removed and the ions recombine to form electrically neutral atoms or molecules. Note that recombination is a slower process than ionization. Atmospheric ionization increases rapidly at dawn, but decreases less rapidly after dark. As mentioned earlier, the region of the Earth's atmosphere that undergoes this ionization is collectively called the ionosphere. The level or density of ionization in the ionosphere is different at different altitudes, and areas with ionization peaks are often grouped into so-called layers or regions. The layers that are important for HF propagation are the D layer from 60 to 100 kilometers, the E layer from 100 to 125 kilometers, and the F layer or layers from about 200 to 275 kilometers. Note that these are only rough numbers. The thickness and altitude of ionospheric layers is never constant. The reason for defining these different layers is that each of these layers will refract and or absorb HF signals in different ways. It's important to note that the ionosphere does not reflect signals, but rather refracts signals. The different electron densities at different altitudes is what makes this refraction possible. Let's start with the lowest level of the ionosphere, the D layer. The D layer only exists during daytime hours and disappears at night. Although the D layer is ionized by solar radiation, the density of free electrons in the D layer is too low to effectively refract HF signals, and therefore the D layer cannot be used for skywave propagation. Instead, the D layer acts as an absorber of HF signals. This absorption is higher for lower frequency signals than for higher frequency signals. Absorption also increases with increasing ionization, so absorption is usually highest at midday. For these reasons, the properties of D-layer absorption mean that higher frequency HF signals work better during the daytime, whereas lower frequency signals work better at night, after this layer has disappeared. The next highest layer, the E layer, is the lowest layer of the ionosphere that can refract HF signals back towards the Earth, and is the lowest layer that supports skywave propagation. Compared to the other layers, it's relatively thin, usually around 10 kilometers or so. The E layer is much more dense, that is, ionized, during the day, but unlike the D layer, it doesn't completely disappear at night. Aside from mostly short-range daytime communications and a few other special cases, E layer propagation is not commonly found in HF. Note, however, that at VHF, the E layer is very important and supports some rather exotic and less predictable propagation modes, such as sporadic E, that make long-distance communication over thousands of kilometers possible, even at the relatively high frequencies of VHF. The F layer is the most important for skywave propagation. During the day, the F layer splits into two sublayers, F1 and F2, which merge back into a single layer again at night. Compared to the D and E layers, the height of the F layers changes considerably based on things such as time of day, season, and solar conditions. More on this shortly. The lower F1 layer primarily supports short to medium distance communications during daylight hours. The F2 layer, on the other hand, is present more or less around the clock. It has the highest altitude and the highest ionization of all the layers, and therefore is responsible for the vast majority of long-distance HF communications. The degree to which the different layers of the ionosphere refract and/or absorb radio frequency signals is largely a function of that signal's frequency. The general rule for HF skywave communications is to always use the highest possible frequency that will reach a given station or destination. This is called the maximum usable frequency, or MUF. Signals whose frequencies are higher than the MUF will not be refracted by the ionosphere. Usually, the MUF increases with increasing ionization. Another important frequency threshold is something called the lowest usable frequency, or LUF. When the signal frequency is at or below the LUF, communication becomes difficult or impossible due to signal loss or attenuation. So we want to choose a frequency that's somewhere between the LUF and the MUF. There is one very important difference, though, between MUF and LUF. Because the LUF is mostly determined by noise, using higher transmit powers, a better antenna, etc., can improve or lower the LUF. MUF, on the other hand, is entirely a function of the ionosphere. You can't improve or increase the MUF by using more power or a better antenna. The MUF simply is what it is. And as we'll see shortly, if the LUF becomes greater than the MUF, no HF communication is possible. One way to determine the MUF is purely through experimentation, but there are also methods for estimating the MUF using something called the critical frequency. The process for measuring the critical frequency is as follows. Pulses at various frequencies are transmitted vertically by equipment called ionosondes. Depending on the frequency of the pulse, these pulses are returned by different layers of the ionosphere, and we can use the return time to estimate the heights of the different layers. Once we reach a certain frequency, the pulses are not returned by the ionosphere, and instead continue on into space. This is the critical frequency. Critical frequency is a function of both the current ionization level as well as the measurement location. It's measured regularly at hundreds of locations around the world. Mathematically speaking, the maximum usable frequency is the critical frequency divided by the cosine of the angle of incidence. If we send a signal straight up at 90 degrees, MUF and critical frequency are the same. But as a practical matter, the maximum usable frequency is usually estimated at 3 to 5 times the critical frequency. Critical frequency is one way of quantifying the state of the ionosphere, but it is an active test. We transmit signals and measure the return signals. In addition to critical frequency, there are 3 common passive methods that can be used to quantify the state of the ionosphere. The first of these is sunspot number, which can be used to predict the level of atmospheric ionization. The second is the solar flux index, which is an actual measurement of ionization. There are also 2 geomagnetic indices, the A index and the K index, which give an indication of the impact of solar particles on the Earth's magnetic field. Taken together, these quantities provide a good indication of the current state of the ionosphere and can be used to predict HF propagation. Let's take a look at each of these 3 quantities in a bit more detail. Sunspots are, relatively, cooler surface regions of the Sun. Relatively in this case means they have temperatures of about 3000 Kelvin versus the normal 6000 Kelvin seen elsewhere. After they appear, sunspots last between a few days and a few months. Sunspots are associated with powerful magnetic fields, and these fields affect how much radiation is given off by the Sun. The greater the number of sunspots, the higher the level of solar activity and radiation. And because of this, more sunspots generally means higher atmospheric ionization, a higher MUF, and better overall HF propagation. The quantitative measure of sunspots is sunspot number, which is a daily measurement of sunspots. Note, however, that sunspot number isn't simply a count of the number of sunspots. It also takes into account additional factors like the size and grouping of sunspots. Sunspot number is recorded by a number of solar observatories around the world, and sunspot number values range from 0 to a maximum recorded value of about 250. As mentioned a moment ago, more sunspots, or a higher sunspot number, almost always means better HF propagation. It's also worth noting that sunspot data have been collected for almost 400 years, giving us valuable information on how the number of sunspots changes over time. And sunspot numbers do change over time. In fact, sunspot activity follows a roughly 11-year solar or sunspot cycle, as shown in this graph. Generally speaking, sunspot numbers are usually around 150 at the peak of a cycle, during which time HF propagation is very good on most frequencies, including higher frequencies. At the bottom or trough of the sunspot cycle, sunspot numbers close to 0, meaning much poorer HF propagation. Given the period of the sunspot cycle, it should be clear that sunspot cycle is only good for predicting long-term HF propagation, that is, in terms of years, and over this time period it is fairly reliable. It's also, however, worth noting that at several points in history, for example in the late 1600s and the early 1800s, sunspot numbers stayed low for several decades, creating so-called minimums or minima with very little solar activity. The reasons for these minima are still very much a mystery. We can also quantify solar activity by measuring the level of solar noise, or flux, at a frequency of 2800 MHz. These measurements are reported as the solar flux index, with values given in so-called solar flux units. Measured solar flux values generally fall in the range of about 50 during a solar cycle minimum to about 300 during a solar cycle maximum. Since solar flux is a measurement, not an observation, it tends to be more consistent and reliable than sunspot number, but it also doesn't have the same 400-year history of values.
Well, you guys keep asking about ham radio. There's a reason I haven't talked about how to do it, because it's the ultimate nerd out session. Oh, yeah. Numbers for the chat started dropping like a rock. Oh, that's funny. But people have been asking for the ham radio explanation for months, and I've been avoiding it because it's really cool, the tech, but you have to understand how radio propagation works, because it's global communications, but you have to understand how the signal gets from one radio to the next. But I promise you, I said most of the time people overcomplicate it. It's just that. The signal goes up and comes back down. It depends on what time of the day. Done. Yes, there's all the stuff in between, but the bottom line is the signal goes up and it comes down. Yeah, I have a note saved on my phone that I send everybody that asks. It has the frequencies in the note where you'll be able to connect. Like, all my ham radio stuff is back here. I just turn it on and, talk to the people around the world. Talk to my dad 500 miles away. But if you ask me for my note on that, it has the frequencies you'll find us. The radios, like I have a radio for the car and a radio for the house, but the car radio I have works in a car or works in your house. It's a compact HF radio that's perfect. So really all you need is the radio and the antenna. With those two, you're on the air, because it doesn't run off of 110 electricity, it runs off 12 volts. Carla has the 891, the same one that Don has as well, the same one I have. I mean, the reality of it is it wouldn't be a bad thing to learn the nerd stuff, because, if you truly want to understand how to communicate freely when the grid goes down, it's possible. It's the way the military communications work. This is the way they communicated, before there was cell phones and phones, because this technology's been around since 1905. Yeah, I like the FT891. Yeah, Well, Sherry, that's what I was giving you guys was the layman terms myself. You know, signal goes up and it goes down. All right, guys, that's a wrap for tonight. Sorry I bored you at the end with the nerd out session. Tomorrow at 1, I'm going to do some more parables. Laura, it's hard to tell if the grid will go down. I expect at some point that it will. But here's the thing. If they ever do some type of false flag, the first thing they will do is remove communications. First thing they do. If you watch that movie Obama produced, Leave the World Behind, first thing they do is remove communications. So they isolate everybody. It removes all the information gathering, so people are left wondering who the enemy is. Textbook 101 for the enemy is to kill communications within the community. Carla, there's a website where you can study the test and like take practice tests. I got my license in 30 days. Yes, Sir Marty B. 650 that's actually not bad. You know, I bought the radios that I had before, you know, I stopped earning a living. But some of these radios are $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. But for $600, you can get an excellent radio that gives you global communications. And then the antenna, maybe $100, $200. But for about $1,000, you have communications that you can talk anywhere in the world without a network, no matter if there's power or not. I mean, you can connect it to your car battery, or you can hook it up to an external 12 volt. Yeah, I think I can put my note on the website. Laura, I don't know. I would suspect so. Yeah, but guys, Bright Light said it best. There's no reason to fear. And that's what they're looking to do, is fear and isolate. The only reason I talk about communications is so that people can still reach each other, exchange information, stuff of that nature. But just like Bright Light said again, these are things that you can learn right now because we still have the internet available to us. It's actually not as complicated as it sounds like, because the dude was totally nerding out. Keep in mind, this is Stone Age technology. You know, they were using this 100 years ago. So if you just understand the basics, that's all that's needed. I mean, literally the signal goes up and it comes back down. The thing you learn is what time of the day, because the ionosphere is going up and down. As it's further away, your deflection angle is wider. And then once you kind of get the basics, it's easy. Just, you know, you learn the rest as you go. Yeah, Don, so what I did, because I struggled with the circuit part of the test as well, there's a website where you can take the test as a trial test, and it's always the same 100 questions in a pool. So I just literally learned the correct answer. Yeah, there's no reason to fear. The Lord does not give us a spirit of fear, but of sound mind. I simply just encourage understanding certain skill sets that will help. That's all. This is one of the reasons I go camping each weekend now. We're going to be going camping again this weekend. As, you know, I'd rather have all that stuff dialed in and all my experiments wrapped up so that if I ever need to, I won't be just winging it. Sure, I'll share the note on the website. That's a great idea. Yeah, so guys, if you text me, and I'll have Chris Blades put it on the website. But if you text me, I'll just copy the note and send it to you. And I have all the links to the stuff I recommend. And I have a link to my friend that has a ham radio channel on YouTube that explains everything in a much easier to understand. That guy was just totally nerding out. But there's not a lot of people that explains the propagation, which is what it means for the antenna signal to go up and down. But everything is on there. The frequencies that you can find me on, the equipment that I recommend, everything. Yeah, I mean, the idea is learn this stuff now while you still have the option to learn it. Well, Bondi baby, I think the key is as you actually apply it through practice, your mind will start to get it. Okay, done. Yes, I'll send the note right now to Chris Blades to put on the website. All right, guys, I love you all. See you tomorrow. Bye.